If you've ever felt lonely in a relationship that looked healthy, this story might sound familiar. He was lying next to me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of his body, close enough that our arms sometimes touched when we turned in our sleep. But I had never felt so alone. At first, I didn't have the language for it. Loneliness, to me, had always meant being by myself. Empty rooms, silent phones, long evenings where no one asked how my day was. This was different. This loneliness had a heartbeat beside it. We met the way most quiet love stories begin, without fireworks, without drama, just two people who found comfort in each other's presence. He wasn't loud or charming in the way movies portray love interests. He was calm, steady, safe. And in the beginning, that felt like everything I had been missing. He listened when I talked. He showed up when he said he would. He held my hand in public, not tightly, but enough to say, "I'm here." I remember thinking, this is what healthy love feels like. There were no red flags, no sudden disappearances, no cruel words thrown during arguments. There were barely any arguments at all. That should have been my first clue. But at the time, I took it as proof that we were mature, that we were different. When we moved in together, people congratulated us. They said we looked peaceful, balanced, like two adults who had figured things out. And in many ways, we had. We paid bills on time. We shared groceries. We asked each other if the other had eaten. From the outside, our life looked complete. But something subtle began to shift, so quietly that I didn't notice it at first. It started with conversations, or rather, the absence of them, not silence. We talked every day. But our words stayed on the surface, like water that never soaked into the soil. How was work? Fine. Traffic was bad. Yeah. I told myself this was normal. Not every relationship was filled with deep conversations and long emotional talks. I didn't need constant reassurance. I wasn't needy. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. Some nights, I would sit on the couch while he scrolled through his phone. The TV played something neither of us was really watching. The room was dim, comfortable. I would glance at him, waiting for him to say something, anything. He never did, and I never asked. Because technically, nothing was wrong. He wasn't ignoring me. He wasn't pushing me away. He was right there. But presence without connection is a strange thing. It leaves you questioning yourself. I began to notice how often I adjusted my emotions to fit the space he left. When I felt overwhelmed, I softened it before speaking. When I felt sad, I told myself it wasn't important enough to share. When something hurt me, I asked myself if it was worth bringing up, or if I should just let it go. Most of the time, I let it go. Not because he told me to. He never said, "You're too emotional." He never dismissed me outright, but he didn't invite me in either. And after a while, you stop knocking on a door that never opens. One evening, I came home exhausted. Not physically, emotionally. The kind of tired that settles behind your eyes and makes your chest feel heavy. The kind that makes you crave being seen more than being comforted. He was already home, sitting at the table, eating dinner. "You're late," he said casually. "I had a long day," I replied. He nodded. That was it. I waited for a question, for curiosity, for what happened, or "Are you okay?" Instead, he looked back down at his plate. I stood there for a moment, unsure of what to do with the rest of my sentence, the part where I wanted to say, "I'm not okay." So I swallowed it. That became our rhythm, me arriving with unspoken words. him never asking for them. Sometimes I wondered if this was my fault. Maybe I didn't express myself clearly enough. Maybe I expected him to read my mind. So I tried being more direct. One night, lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, I said quietly, "Do you ever feel like we don't really talk anymore?" He turned toward me. "We talk all the time," he said. Not defensively, just factually. I didn't know how to explain the difference between talking and connecting, between exchanging information and sharing yourself, so I nodded. "Yeah, I guess." And the conversation ended there. I told myself I was overthinking. He had grown up in a family that didn't talk about feelings. He showed love in practical ways. He fixed things around the house. He made sure the car had gas. He remembered my coffee order. I reminded myself of these things whenever the emptiness crept in. This is just how he loves. But love, I was slowly learning, is not only about what someone does, it's also about what they reach for. And he never reached for me emotionally. There were moments when I almost felt foolish for wanting more. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't distant in obvious ways. He didn't disappear for days or leave me guessing where I stood. In fact, he was consistent. But consistency without intimacy becomes its own kind of absence. I began to feel lonely in ways I couldn't explain to anyone else. How do you tell your friends that you feel alone when your partner sleeps beside you every night? How do you describe missing someone who hasn't actually left? So I didn't tell anyone. I smiled at dinner parties. I posted photos of us smiling on vacations. I answered "we're good" whenever someone asked how we were doing. And for the most part, I believed it. Until the loneliness started showing up in my body, in the way my chest tightened when I spoke and realized no one was really listening, in the way I stayed up later than him, scrolling on my phone, hoping for connection from strangers, in the way I felt a small sense of relief when he left the room, because at least then, my loneliness made sense. One night, I caught myself wishing he would leave. Not forever, just for a little while, so I could know what it felt like to be alone without feeling guilty for it. That thought scared me, because if being physically alone felt easier than being emotionally alone together, what did that say about us? Still, I stayed. I stayed because there was nothing wrong enough to leave, no betrayal to point to, no harsh words to quote. Just a quiet ache that never quite went away. I began to disappear in small ways. I shared less. I laughed softer. I stopped bringing up the things that mattered most to me. Not because he told me to stop, but because it felt like speaking into a room that echoed but never answered back. Sometimes, lying in bed, I would turn toward him, watching his face as he slept. So peaceful. So unaware. I wondered if he felt the distance too, or if this calm, emotionally sparse space felt like love to him. And that question hurt more than any argument ever could, because if he was content, then the loneliness belonged only to me, and that meant I had nowhere to place it but inside myself. That was the beginning, not the end, not even the worst part. Just the quiet realization that being chosen to stay does not always mean being chosen to be seen. Loneliness didn't arrive all at once. It didn't knock. It didn't announce itself. It didn't even feel painful in the beginning. It seeped in slowly, like water finding cracks in a wall you thought was solid. At first, it only showed up in quiet moments. Moments I could easily explain away, like when I told him about something that mattered to me, a book that moved me, a memory from childhood, a fear I hadn't fully admitted to myself yet. He would listen, nod, say something reasonable, and then move on, No follow-up questions, no curiosity, no attempt to step closer. I told myself not everyone knows how to respond to emotions. That didn't mean he didn't care. But after a while, I noticed something unsettling. The more vulnerable I became, the more alone I felt afterward. So I learned to be careful with my honesty. I learned which parts of myself were safe to bring into the room, and which ones were better left outside. That's how loneliness teaches you. Not through rejection, but through quiet indifference. I started paying attention to my timing. If he seemed tired, I stayed quiet. If he looked distracted, I waited. If he was in a good mood, I kept things light. I became an expert at emotional weather forecasting. I told myself this was compromise. This was maturity. But somewhere along the way, it turned into self-erasure. I stopped asking for reassurance, stopped naming my needs out loud, stopped expecting emotional presence, not because he told me to stop, but because hoping had started to feel embarrassing. There were nights I lay awake beside him, staring into the dark. I would rehearse sentences in my head. I feel disconnected from you. I miss feeling close. I need more than this. Each sentence sounded reasonable in theory, but when I imagined saying them out loud, I felt small. Not afraid of his anger, he beat him up. He rarely raised his voice, but afraid of his calm. That steady, rational tone that made everything sound settled, as if my feelings were simply an inconvenience to be managed. So I swallowed my words, and loneliness settled deeper. He still did kind things. He brought me food when I worked late. He asked if I needed anything from the store. He showed up for birthdays and family events. Anyone looking at us would have said we were solid, and that made my loneliness harder to justify. I started arguing with myself. You're lucky. This is what stability looks like. Other people would be grateful. Gratitude became a way to silence grief. One afternoon, I came home early. The apartment was quiet. He wasn't there yet. I sat on the couch and let myself breathe differently, deeper, freer. That's when I realized something that startled me. I felt less lonely when I was alone. The thought made my chest tighten, because what kind of person feels relief in the absence of their partner? I told myself it was nothing, just needing space. Everyone does. But the truth lingered. When he came home later that evening, the room felt heavier again, not because he brought negativity with him, but because the emotional distance returned, silently, immediately. I started filling the gaps elsewhere. I listened to podcasts where people spoke openly about feelings. I read books that named emotions I didn't know how to express. I scrolled through comment sections, finding comfort in strangers' confessions. Sometimes I would pause a video and think, I wish I could talk to him like this, but I never did. Because talking wasn't the problem. Being met was. There was a moment that stays with me. We were at a friend's house for dinner. Everyone was sharing stories, laughing, interrupting each other, leaning in. I started telling a story about something that had hurt me recently. Nothing dramatic, just something honest. Halfway through my sentence, I noticed his attention drift. He wasn't rude. He didn't interrupt. He just checked out. I finished my story anyway, feeling my voice trail off. No one noticed, except me. On the drive home, the car was quiet. The streetlights passed in steady intervals. I wanted to cry, not because of what happened at dinner, but because of what didn't. He didn't ask if I was okay, and I didn't tell him I wasn't. Loneliness teaches you restraint. It teaches you how to become smaller without realizing it. I began to censor myself mid-sentence. I was thinking, never mind. I felt kind of, it's not important. I'll handle it. Each unfinished thought became another brick in the wall between us. I noticed how easily he shared practical things, schedules, plans, logistics, but emotional language seemed foreign to him. When I talked about feelings, he responded with solutions. When I talked about confusion, he offered logic. When I talked about pain, he offered perspective. None of it was wrong, but none of it was what I needed. I didn't want answers. I wanted connection. One night I tried again. We were sitting in the living room. The TV was off. The room felt still enough. "I feel kind of lonely lately," I said. The words hung between us. He looked at me, surprised. "Lonely?" he asked. "But you're not alone." I nodded. "I know." He waited for me to explain further. I didn't know how. Because how do you explain loneliness to someone who believes presence is enough? After a moment, he said, "Is there something you want to do? Maybe we should go out more." I shook my head. "That's not really it." He frowned slightly, confused. "Well, I don't know what to tell you." And just like that, the conversation reached its limit. I smiled and said, "It's fine, forget it." And that was the moment something in me shifted. Not dramatically, just enough. I stopped trying to translate my emotions into words he could understand. I stopped believing that if I explained myself better, things would change. Because loneliness doesn't come from misunderstanding. It comes from misalignment. I began to watch myself from a distance. How I laughed at things that didn't amuse me. How I nodded during conversations that felt empty. How I said, "I'm fine," automatically, not just to him, but to myself. The relationship didn't feel bad. It felt quiet, too quiet, like a room where sound had been absorbed by thick walls. Sometimes late at night I wondered, was I asking for too much? Was this just how long-term relationships became? Did intimacy always fade into comfort? I searched online for answers, articles, forums, anonymous posts. I found story after story that sounded like mine. People saying things like, "He's a good partner, but I feel invisible. She's always there, but I feel alone. Nothing is wrong, yet everything feels empty." Reading those words felt like holding a mirror up to my life. Comforting and terrifying. Because if this wasn't just me, then it wasn't something I could simply fix by trying harder. The loneliness began to show up physically, in the way my shoulders stayed tense, in the way my stomach knotted when I thought about the future, in the way sleep didn't fully rest me anymore. I was tired all the time, not from doing too much, but from holding too much inside. He noticed I was quieter. "Are you okay?" he asked one evening. The question caught me off guard. "Yes," I said automatically. He accepted the answer without hesitation, and for some reason, that hurt more than if he had pushed, because it confirmed what I already suspected. He didn't know me anymore, or maybe he never really had. Loneliness doesn't always make you want to leave. Sometimes it makes you want to disappear. I fantasized about small escapes, taking a trip alone, staying late at work, sitting in my car longer before going inside. Moments where I didn't have to perform contentment. I still loved him. That was the confusing part. There was affection, there was history, there was safety. But love without emotional reciprocity slowly turns into something heavier, like carrying a conversation that never gets answered. I started to grieve quietly, not the loss of him, but the loss of the version of myself who believed love meant being known. I missed her, the woman who spoke freely, who expected to be met, who believed emotional closeness was a given, not a request. That woman was fading, and loneliness was taking her place. One night, lying beside him, I turned onto my side. He was already asleep. I watched the steady rise and fall of his chest. I thought about all the things I hadn't said, all the feelings that lived between us, unnamed. And for the first time, I wondered, if nothing changes, can I live like this? The question didn't demand an answer yet. It just waited, quietly, because loneliness doesn't rush you. It sits with you until you're ready to listen. Loneliness changes you, not all at once, not in ways that are easy to notice. It doesn't scream, it whispers. And if you listen long enough, you start to believe it. I didn't wake up one morning and decide to abandon myself. I simply began choosing peace over truth, ease over honesty, silence over expression. At first, it felt responsible. I told myself I was protecting the relationship, protecting him, protecting us. But slowly, without realizing it, I was protecting everyone except myself. I stopped checking in with my emotions, not intentionally. I just didn't ask them questions anymore. When something hurt, I told myself it wasn't that bad. When something felt wrong, I told myself it was temporary. When I felt invisible, I told myself I was being dramatic. I became very good at minimizing myself. It made everything smoother. Less tension, less discomfort, less explanation. And that's how self-abandonment often disguises itself as maturity. I noticed it first in small moments, like when he interrupted me mid-sentence and I let it go, or when he forgot something important to me and I laughed it off, or when I wanted to share something vulnerable and decided it could wait. Eventually, I stopped noticing altogether, because the absence of self feels normal once you live in it long enough. I adapted. I became easier. I learned which topics felt safe. Work updates, plans for the weekend, things that required no emotional investment. I learned which topics felt heavy, my fears, my sadness, my need for closeness. Those stayed inside. Unspoken needs don't risk rejection. They just slowly suffocate you instead. I stopped asking questions too. Not because I didn't care, but because asking led nowhere. When I asked how he was feeling, he answered with facts. I'm tired. Work was busy. Nothing much. And I nodded, as if that was enough. We mirrored each other's emotional minimalism, two people sharing space, avoiding depth. There was a day I realized I couldn't remember the last time I had cried in front of him. Not because I hadn't cried, but because I had learned how not to. I cried in the shower, in the car, late at night while he slept. I wiped my face before coming back into the room. I didn't want to explain tears I didn't believe would be held. Emotional self-abandonment is quiet. It doesn't announce itself as pain. It feels like numbness, like walking through your life with the volume turned down. I laughed when I was supposed to. I smiled when it felt expected. I responded when spoken to. But inside, something was withdrawing. I noticed how often I said, "It's okay," even when it wasn't, especially when it wasn't. "It's okay" became my shield, a way to avoid discomfort, a way to avoid being seen. If I didn't acknowledge my needs, no one could ignore them. There was a moment, small, almost forgettable, that revealed how far I had gone. We were standing in the kitchen. I was talking about something that mattered to me. Midway through, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then picked it up. I kept talking for a few seconds, then stopped. He didn't notice. He finished his message, looked up and said, "Sorry, what were you saying?" And without thinking, I said, "Nothing. It wasn't important." The words came out automatically, effortless, like muscle memory. And the worst part, I believed them. I started experiencing myself as an inconvenience. My emotions felt like extra baggage. My needs felt excessive. My desire for connection felt childish. So I grew smaller, not physically, emotionally. I admired how little he needed, how content he seemed with routine, with silence, with things staying the same. I told myself I should be more like that, less emotional, less sensitive, less me. That's when I began confusing self-abandonment with self-improvement. I read articles about being low maintenance, about not overthinking, about choosing gratitude, and I applied them ruthlessly to myself. I practiced emotional restraint. I trained myself not to react. I praised myself for being calm. What I didn't realize was that calmness built on suppression is not peace. It's disconnection. I stopped trusting my instincts. When something felt off, I questioned myself instead of the situation. Maybe I'm expecting too much. Maybe this is normal. Maybe love just looks like this. Doubt became my default. And when you doubt yourself long enough, you start outsourcing your sense of reality. I looked to him for cues. If he seemed fine, then everything must be fine. If he wasn't worried, then I shouldn't be either. If he didn't see a problem, then maybe there wasn't one. My inner voice grew quieter. His neutrality became my compass. I forgot what it felt like to be fully present with myself, to name my emotions without editing them, to feel sadness without justifying it, to want closeness without apologizing. Those parts of me went dormant, waiting. There were moments when fragments of myself resurfaced, like when I was alone with friends and laughed too loudly, or when a song made my chest ache unexpectedly, or when someone listened to me without distraction. Those moments felt unfamiliar, almost overwhelming, like remembering a language I once spoke fluently. And then there was the guilt, because part of me knew I was disappearing, but another part told me this was the price of stability, that relationships require sacrifice, that not everything needs to be shared, that love isn't supposed to feel intense all the time. I told myself this was adulthood, but adulthood shouldn't feel like emotional exile. I stopped imagining a future that included emotional closeness. I stopped picturing conversations that felt alive. I adjusted my expectations downward, and in doing so, I adjusted myself out of the equation. There was a night I caught my reflection in the bathroom mirror. I looked fine, normal, put together, but something in my eyes felt distant, like I was watching myself live a life I hadn't chosen consciously. That's when it hit me. I wasn't just lonely in the relationship. I was lonely inside myself. Emotional self-abandonment creates a strange numbness. You're not miserable enough to leave, not fulfilled enough to stay wholeheartedly. You exist in the middle, suspended. I realized I hadn't asked myself an honest question in a long time. Not, what should I do? Not, how do I fix this? But simply, how do I feel? The answer scared me because I wasn't sure anymore. I had become so practiced at adapting that I no longer knew what I wanted. I knew what kept things calm, what avoided conflict, what made life easier, but I didn't know what made me feel alive. One night, lying awake, I placed my hand up my chest, just to feel something, to confirm I was still there. My heart beat steadily, reliable, but distant. And I understood then, neglect doesn't only come from others. Sometimes it teaches you how to neglect yourself. I didn't blame him. That's important to say. He never asked me to disappear. He just never noticed when I did. And I never asked him to notice, because somewhere along the way, I decided my presence was optional. The most painful part of emotional self-abandonment isn't the loss of the relationship, it's the loss of trust in yourself. When you no longer believe your feelings deserve space, when you no longer advocate for your inner world, when you start measuring your worth by how little you need, that's when loneliness becomes internal. I still loved him, but love without self is unsustainable. It turns into performance, and I was exhausted. There was a moment, quiet, ordinary, that marked a shift. We were sitting together, scrolling on our phones, silence between us, familiar, safe, and suddenly a thought surfaced. Not loud, not dramatic, just clear. If I stay like this, I will disappear completely. The thought didn't demand action. It didn't even come with fear, just recognition. And that was the beginning of something else. Not a decision, not a confrontation, just awareness. The slow return of a question I had avoided for too long. What happens when you choose everyone else and forget yourself? That question stayed with me, waiting. Because the hardest realizations don't push. They sit beside you until you're ready to turn toward them. The realization didn't arrive like a storm. There was no shouting, no confession, no final argument that cracked everything open. It arrived quietly, on an ordinary day, in an ordinary moment, so unremarkable that, for a while, I didn't even recognize it as the turning point. It was a Sunday morning, the kind of morning that felt slow and gentle on the surface. Soft light through the curtains, the hum of the city outside, the quiet comfort of routine. He was sitting at the kitchen table, drinking coffee, scrolling through his phone. I stood at the counter, making breakfast. We moved around each other with practiced ease. Two people who knew each other's rhythms well enough not to collide. Everything looked peaceful, and that was the problem. I felt it while cracking eggs into a bowl. A thought passed through me, light, almost curious. If nothing ever changes, is this my life? The question didn't come with panic, just clarity. I pictured the future the way it would likely unfold. More quiet mornings, more polite evenings, more shared logistics and parallel lives, a life that functioned, a relationship that worked. And suddenly, my chest felt heavy, not with fear, with grief. I realized then that I wasn't waiting for him to change. I was waiting for myself to disappear completely, and I didn't want to. I looked at him across the room. He seemed content, relaxed, at home, and something inside me softened, then broke. Not because he was doing something wrong, but because I understood something I had been avoiding. He wasn't withholding love. He was offering the only kind he knew how to give, and it wasn't enough for me. That truth didn't make him a villain, but it made our relationship incompatible. And that distinction mattered, because for a long time I had believed that if no one was at fault, then no one was allowed to leave. I carried that realization quietly for days. I didn't rush to talk about it. I didn't even name it yet. I just noticed. I noticed how often I checked out emotionally, how my body leaned away before my mind caught up, how the idea of forever no longer felt comforting, just heavy. One evening, we were sitting on the couch. The TV played something familiar, a show we had watched before. Neither of us was paying much attention. He laughed at a joke. I smiled automatically, and then it hit me. This is how it will always be. Not worse, not better. Just this. I wasn't angry. I wasn't resentful. I was awake, and awareness is dangerous when you've been surviving on numbness. I started noticing moments I had ignored before, how conversations ended before they began, how my attempts at depth dissolved into practicality, how my emotional world lived entirely inside me. And for the first time, instead of asking what's wrong with me, I asked something different. What am I sacrificing to stay? The answer wasn't dramatic. I wasn't sacrificing happiness every day. I was sacrificing myself slowly. My voice, my emotional truth, my need to be known. The realization didn't explode. It settled. One night, lying in bed, I turned toward him. He was awake, scrolling on his phone. I watched his face in the soft glow of the screen. And I knew. Not because of something he did in that moment, but because of what I felt. Or rather, what I didn't. I didn't feel safe to open my heart, and without that, love becomes performance. I tried one last time, not to fix things, but to be honest. I feel like I've been disappearing, I said quietly. He put his phone down, looked at me. What do you mean? He asked, genuinely confused. I searched for words that wouldn't sound accusatory. I feel like I've been shrinking myself emotionally. He frowned slightly. I don't want you to feel that way. I know, I said, and that was the truth. He didn't want me to hurt. He just didn't know how to meet me where I was. There was a long pause. He waited. I waited too. For him to ask more, for curiosity, for a step toward me. Instead, he said carefully, I just don't think about emotions the way you do. And something inside me went still. Because there it was. Not defensiveness, not dismissal, just honesty. In that moment, I felt a strange sense of relief. Not because it solved anything, but because it confirmed what I already knew. This wasn't a phase. This wasn't miscommunication. This was a difference in emotional language. I nodded. I know, I said again, and I meant it. After that conversation, nothing changed on the surface. We still shared meals, still slept in the same bed, still laughed occasionally. But inside me, a line had been crossed. I couldn't unsee it. I stopped fantasizing about ways to fix us. I stopped rehearsing conversations in my head. I stopped waiting for a moment that would justify my leaving. Because I finally understood something important. You don't need trauma to leave a relationship. You don't need betrayal. You don't need a dramatic ending. Sometimes not being met is reason enough. That realization didn't make leaving easy, but it made staying impossible. I grieved quietly. Not just the relationship, but the version of me who stayed so long hoping to be seen. I felt compassion for her. She wasn't weak. She was loyal. She believed love meant patience. She just didn't realize patience had turned into self-erasure. I started reconnecting with myself in small ways. I journaled again, not about us, about me. I named feelings without editing them. I listened to music that made me feel something. I spent time alone without numbing the quiet. And slowly, my inner voice returned. One afternoon, sitting by myself in a cafe, I felt something unexpected. Relief, not joy, not excitement, just the absence of heaviness. And I realized something quietly devastating. I felt more emotionally alive alone than I did with him. That's when the decision began forming. Not fully, not urgently, but inevitably. I didn't leave that day, or the next. I needed time to honor what we had, to understand what I was choosing. Because leaving someone who isn't cruel is a particular kind of grief. There's no villain to blame, only a truth to accept. I stopped asking myself if he loved me. I asked something harder. Can I love myself here? The answer was gentle, but clear. The realization wasn't loud. It didn't demand action. It simply sat with me. like a truth that had been waiting patiently to be acknowledged. And once you see that staying requires abandoning yourself, you don't need drama to leave. You just need courage. This wasn't the end. But it was the moment everything changed. The moment I stopped hoping he would see me and started seeing myself. Leaving didn't feel like freedom, not at first. It felt like grief without permission. There was no dramatic goodbye, no slammed doors, no final speeches where everything suddenly made sense. Just a quiet decision that had already been made inside me long before I spoke it out loud. I remember the day I told him. It wasn't planned. There was no perfect timing, just an ordinary evening. We were sitting across from each other, eating dinner. The room felt familiar, too familiar, and I realized that if I didn't say it now, I might never say it at all. "I don't think I can do this anymore," I said softly. The words surprised me with how calm they sounded. He looked up, confused, concerned, still gentle. "What do you mean?" he asked, and for a moment I almost stopped. Because explaining emotional absence to someone who doesn't live in that language feels like translating grief into math. "I feel alone," I said, "even when we're together." He frowned. "But I'm here." "I know," I said, and that was the whole problem. I tried to explain, not accusing, not dramatic, just honest, that I felt unseen, that I had been shrinking, that I didn't feel emotionally safe anymore. He listened, really listened, and that almost made it harder. "I never meant to make you feel that way," he said. "I know," I replied. "I don't think you did anything wrong." That silence that followed was heavy, because when no one is wrong, the ending feels unjustified. "So what are you saying?" he asked quietly. I took a breath. "I'm saying I can't keep losing myself to stay." The words felt real in my mouth. Uncomfortable, true. He didn't argue. He didn't beg. He didn't get angry. He just looked sad. And that broke my heart in a way shouting never could. "I thought we were okay," he said. I nodded. "I know you did." And I meant it. That night we slept in the same bed, facing opposite directions. The space between us felt louder than any argument we'd never had. I cried silently, not because I doubted my decision, but because loving someone who isn't capable of loving you the way you need is its own kind of mourning. Leaving took time. Logistics, conversations, boxes. Each step felt heavier than it should have, because nothing was wrong enough to justify how much it hurt. People asked questions. Did something happen? Did he cheat? Was there a big fight? I shook my head every time. "No," I said. And that answer never felt sufficient. How do you explain leaving because of what didn't happen? Because of conversations that never went deeper? Because of emotions that never had room? Because of a loneliness that lived quietly between two people? So I stopped explaining and started listening to myself. Living alone felt strange at first. Too quiet, no familiar footsteps, no shared routines. But the silence felt honest, and honesty was something I'd been missing. I noticed how my body changed, how my shoulders relaxed, how my breathing slowed, how my thoughts felt less crowded. I cried more, but the tears felt clean, like release, not suppression. There were moments I missed him, his steadiness, his reliability, the comfort of having someone there. I didn't pretend otherwise. Leaving someone who wasn't cruel doesn't erase affection. It just changes its shape. But there was something else too. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. Space. Space to feel without editing. Space to speak without calculating. space to exist without minimizing myself. One night, sitting alone on the floor of my new apartment, surrounded by half-unpacked boxes, I laughed, out loud, at nothing in particular. The sound startled me, because it felt like my voice had returned. I started reconnecting with parts of myself I'd left behind. I wrote again. I spoke more freely. I noticed my emotions instead of managing them, and slowly, I rebuilt trust with myself. I learned something important in the aftermath. Emotional neglect doesn't always come with obvious harm. Sometimes it comes wrapped in calm, inconsistency, in good intentions, and that's what makes it so hard to leave. But love that requires you to disappear is not love that sustains you. Even if it feels safe, even if it feels familiar, even if it feels almost enough. I stopped asking myself whether he loved me. I started asking whether I could stay whole in that love, and I finally honored the answer. Leaving didn't make me happier overnight. Healing isn't linear. Some days felt light. Others felt heavy with doubt. But even on the hardest days, there was one difference. I was still there. I wasn't silencing myself anymore. I wasn't shrinking to maintain peace. I wasn't calling loneliness stability, and that mattered. I don't tell this story to make him the villain. He wasn't. He loved the way he knew how, and I loved the way I knew how. Our ways just didn't meet. Sometimes, love isn't about trying harder. It's about being honest enough to stop pretending. If you're listening to this and feel that quiet ache, the kind that doesn't scream, the kind that doesn't come with obvious pain, just know this: you are not ungrateful for wanting to be seen. You are not demanding for needing emotional presence. You are not wrong for leaving a place where you slowly disappear. Loneliness doesn't always mean being alone. Sometimes it means being unseen. And choosing yourself is not abandonment. It's survival. I didn't leave because I stopped loving him. I left because I started loving myself enough to stay. And that was the quiet ending, not a triumph, not a tragedy, just a woman choosing not to vanish anymore. If this story felt familiar, you're not alone. And you don't have to disappear to be loved.